look at it?
Yeah, only the first three were pretty full.
Well, did we want and you're holding on.
I think, I will definitely keep it in mind. Because we have the first council, yeah, and when he said that, I November. He was thinking that we would have this council meeting earlier, but we haven't been able to manage to do it until the end of the year.
That sounds like a choice.
So I don't know if it will, but.
I have, yeah, Bernie, and mine are hanging by in the morning.
I still have the ability to do a flyer.
Right, so.
Dang it, I made this thing, I'm actually,
Are you gonna be on the end of that?
okay.
Well, speaking of added costs, the Ukrainians have reapplied for parole visas. And they've been done it since March because they didn't expire until July.
Believe it or not.
Haven't heard anything, haven't heard anything. I've been trying to contact the senators, nudge them along. Now they've added an additional $1,000 per person. Yeah, so there's $3,000 they have to find to renew.
Jeez. Oh, that's sturdy pool.
I got a ballroom to build, you know?
Yeah.
That's gonna tell me.
But you know what I loved about getting up to the smoke here is the first
Stress and
on this side, look, because
I don't know if, Donna, if you saw the meme on Facebook that said, I hope President AOC has that volume.
yeah, this is a.
I did see that one, yeah. That was good. I like that one.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's Yeah, that's when he comes right up as a giant
I
rabbit.
know. Look at what the actually said. And I asked her about it, I said, is she skinny? He said, no, she's well.
Sounds like we're quieting down already.
I know I've seen that one before, and I think it's just one.
You know, I had one.
Going to Quaker tomorrow.
This is all the one in the court. Yeah. Is that? Yeah, it was similar.
Then I'm glad that you said out.
Yeah, I'll sit here because I can get up really busy and about medicine, so.
You know, when you sent me the email about $40,
No, I see.
I had to read it over like 5 times. And then $50. Yeah. So, and I had to read it over several times before I kind of quite understood what I was supposed to do. No, that's fine, that's fine. But see, I didn't have to contact you and say I have questions. No, I figured it out. And then yesterday morning, I decided to write a rent check, and I wrote the whole thing out, and I got it all squared up and added up, and all the 5 Sundays and the 4 Sundays and everything, and I forgot December 19th, solstice Friday. So I had to write the whole check over again. And the note, I sent a note with them, because, you know, it gets a little confusing. Could you?
It's supposed to not fall over. It needs a bigger position. Anyway.
Our gathering song, Come, Come, Wherever You Are.
Whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come, come, come.
helping Shelley with the service this morning. So welcome to everyone. My pronouns are she, her. Welcome to all the online members and any guests. I don't see any guests today. Don't forget, there's an offering plate in the back. You can donate online. And I think we still have a jar for change for charities, yes, but we really haven't decided what we're going to do with that yet, have we?
The youth did.
The youth did, who gathered that money to initially, right, okay. We try to keep the service to 1 hour, but sometimes we go over. Please feel free to leave if you need to, no hostages. Shelley Dugan will be speaking today on the subject of tragedy. Let's see. If anyone is interested in serving on the speaker planning team, please see Brian or Carrie. Thank you, Carrie, for your help. But they could use more help. All right. If you could just think of something you would be interested in hearing about. Next week, we're going to have Jeffrey Janetta work back again. He's been with us a number of times on a variety of different subjects, and we've always enjoyed his services. So now I invite you to take a deep, slow, gentle breath, and as you exhale, just as intentionally, try to separate yourself from all the chaos all around you, and join us in meditating on this musical prelude. Thank you, Madison. Our responsive reading today. There we go. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit, seeking rest.
Who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid.
We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart.
Who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous.
We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith.
Who come to probe and explore, who come to learn.
We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming.
Who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family.
Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome.
We bid you welcome.
Therefore, we light this chalice together and say,
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
okay, and now opening hymn number 128. Please stand if you're able.
For all it is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build the common good, and make our own days glad. reward for hours of rest and love. We come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life.
Please sit. Our beloved community moment is one written by a Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another, to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude. Taking the time to look into another's face and see the communion, the reflection in our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. And I think we have a reading from Bob next.
Okay. A Blessing for When Things Don't Make Any Sense by Kate Bowler. God, I'm fumbling around for answers, reasons, meaning. I can't find any purpose in this pain. Why me? Why them? Why now? I don't know when this is going to get better, or if I will ever feel relief. Blessed are we who need to be reminded that there are some things we can fix and some things we can't. Blessed are we who can say, my life isn't always getting better. Right in the midst of the pain and fear and uncertainty, may we hunt for beauty and meaning and truth together. Not to erase the pain or solve the pain, though surely that would be nice, but to remind us that the beauty and sorrow coexist. And that doesn't mean we're broken or have been forgotten. In our hope, in our disappointment, in our joy, in our pain, God is here, and we are never, were never, and will be never alone.
Good morning. Good morning. It is very good to see all of you, and thank you for inviting me back, because I love being here. This is our opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another. So I invite you to share, what is it that is on your heart? And if you're online, you are welcome to chime in, and either myself or Alice will light a candle for you.
Yesterday, Kelly and I went to a Quaker wedding, and it was a delightful, quiet, casual, unadorned but beautiful experience, and it was phenomenal.
Just want to lift up in gratitude. Yesterday, I helped organize a Degrowth Summit, and it went well, and it was well attended, and I'm glad to see so many people embracing the degrowth philosophy.
Since we didn't have announcements, I'll roll my announcement into my joys and concerns. I have a deep joy. Yesterday, I was invited to a table at the zoo school since I had spoken there years ago. So I thought, okay, and I brought my books and my stuff, and I made a few calendars and brought a few pictures of Greenie and a lot of pictures of Africa. I won't be here next week because I'm going to be setting up my exhibit at Burnhaven Library, all of Kenya and Tanzania. So, and if you want a preview, I did print a few calendars with some of my favorite pictures. Anyway, you can look at that. But the great thing about yesterday, I didn't sell very much, which I didn't expect. And that's a lot of work. But to speak with those young people, especially, and getting older people who are alumni, the zoo school's been there for 30 years, and I think it was like in 2017 that I spoke there. And they are such wonderful young people who are so committed to the environment, sustainability, and animals. So they were tickled just to talk to me about the privileges that I've had. And I ended up selling one of my favorite pictures of Greenie framed for much less than I should have, but it was to a young autistic woman whose obsession was fish and oceans and water. Oh. And it just tickles my heart to know that that girl is going to see that on her wall every day and love Greenie. Mm-hmm. So life is good.
Kathy had a message that she has an announcement. I forgot to say any other announcements. So, Kathy, do you want to do that now?
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I did put some of this in the newsletter. We're going to participate with the United Way to help provide home essentials for folks leaving shelters and moving into their own places. They're looking for items and money, and we can convert money into packs of essentials. They're also looking for blankets. If anybody's interested in making Tide blankets, let me know. The deadline for this is November 5th. Also, I had put something in about the open door, but the need is very urgent for volunteers and for what they call drop-off bags. Someone can walk in the door, and if they have immediate need for food, they can take one of these bags without worrying about having to go through screening or anything. So they need volunteers on Saturdays for the month of November because the SNAP benefits have been declined, and with the government shutdown, people simply don't have money to buy food. So you can find the link in the newsletter or let me know, and we will figure out what more we can do. Thanks.
I'm going to light a candle for Kathy and all that she does.
Yeah.
I was going to light a candle for Kathy.
You can.
So she's at home, not feeling well. We kind of started with me last weekend for a few days of a cold, and then she's got it. The question is, where did it come from? Student. Oh.
Yeah, children. My question is, where is it going?
That's why I'm here.
Sorry, Kelly.
That's all right.
This is a joy and a concern. First, I just got back from a week in Florida with a guest of a wonderful gal. And the other is our daughter has signed a purchase agreement for a place in Wisconsin.
Oh.
Our oldest girl, so I'm not happy about that.
Do you want me to light one for you?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's been up to Raspberry Island to see the amazing exhibit, but today's the last day and it's a gorgeous day out. Didn't you find it today?
Yes, if you love color. Yeah, and some really amazing artistry and detail.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
From Mexico.
Yep,
Yeah.
and you park at Harriet Island and walk across.
Well, actually, there is parking right there.
Yeah, but you can't always be sure that,
No,
yeah,
no.
that there's spaces.
I was there for a second time yesterday and there was parking, but it was not a delightfully sunny day yesterday, so there might end today being the last day. But if you can get up there, I would really, Todd was the one who told me about it originally. He rode his bicycle up there.
I'd like to light 2 candles. Actually, I'd probably light more, but one is a joyful gratitude, and that is that this congregation has decided to give me a little bump because of support that I give for Brian, which is pretty darn amazing. And I am appreciative of it, but it also just says a lot about your investment in your minister. And I have a unique types of skills, so I am glad to be of service. And the other is that today is my ordination anniversary. So 29 years as a UU minister. And I was a minister of another denomination before that, but I started when I was 3. So, are there any folks online or anyone else in the congregation? So this is a final candle. And I will just read as it says, I light a final candle for all those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together, for all of these joys and concerns, both spoken in our hearts to... It's a trick candle.
That's right.
Bob has another reading for us.
Blessing the Dust by Jan Richardson. All those days you felt like dust, like dirt, as if all you had to do was turn your face toward the wind and be scattered to the 4 corners, or swept away by the smallest breath as insubstantial. Did you not know what the Holy One can do with dust? This is the day we freely say we are scorched. This is the hour we are marked by what has made it through the burning. This is the moment we ask for the blessing that lives within the ancient ashes that makes its home inside the soil of this sacred earth. So let us be marked not for sorrow, and let us be marked not for shame. Let us be marked not for false humility or for thinking we are less than we are, but for claiming what God can do within the dust, within the dirt, within the stuff of which the world is made, and the stars that blaze in our bones, and the galaxies that spiral inside the smudge we bear.
Thanks, Bob. I love having a voice actor do the readings. I'm often surprised by people's resilience. When I worked in the hospital, folks would tell me stories about what was going on in their personal life while they were there to deal with health concerns. One day I went to our oncology unit, and there was a woman who was dealing with a particularly nasty cancer. And she told me that she was a recent widow. Her husband had died just a few weeks ago. On top of that, her house had burned down, and she lost everything. And what made it worse was that her house burned down when her husband burned it down in an act of suicide. That was tragic. You folks know some things about tragedy. You may have experienced tragedy firsthand, or you may have experienced it as part of our world anymore. There are different kinds of tragedies. There are what I call sort of the big tragedies, and those are things like natural disasters, floods, tornadoes. There are human-made disasters, wars, riots. There are combinations, things that are human-made and nature together. Climate change would be one example. Famine could be another. And then there's something called tragedy of the common, and that's when resources that are there for everybody get misused by individuals or corporations because of greed, and that creates some sort of a natural, or creates some sort of a disaster. And even though we might not live through a particular horrible event, we're still affected by it. You might not have lost someone in 9/11. You might not have struggled to survive Katrina. But those awful events still affect us today and affect our world. My wish is that I could just talk to you about tragedy from an intellectual point of view, but my guess is that some of you in this room know some things about tragedy. And some of you know some things about tragedy more than once. You've been through more than one, and some of you will experience it in the future. And I would first off offer my condolences, because life gets very, very hard. The question sort of becomes, so what do we do after tragedy? Well, again, I'm going to go back to working in the hospital, and I used to be part of the CISM team, Critical Incident Stress Management. So whenever we had a particularly awful event, say a pediatric death or the suicide of one of our staff people, the team would be called in, and we would bring in the folks that were affected and give them a space to talk about what had happened. We didn't want to talk about it too much, but we'd want to talk about it some. And then we would say, these are the things that you're likely to experience. You know, sleeplessness, and you might not have an appetite, or you might have a huge appetite. You might have flashes of what you'd experienced. You might be tearful. So we would sort of warn them about, these are things that would be common for you to expect. And then how do you get through it? So for the next several days especially, try to keep your sleep schedule. Eat good food. Do some gentle exercise. Be around good people. So how do you kind of get your balance back, and how do you not make it worse? That's sort of the first step after a tragedy. And then there are 3 big tasks. The first has to do with resiliency skills. So resiliency, that ability to bounce back, or maybe claw your way back, because it's not always bouncing, that's actually skills that you can build. And there are things that they suggest. Having a positive mindset, focusing on gratitude, making sure that you are connecting with people that are beneficial to you and that do you good. There are also things like increasing your self-awareness, being flexible, learning to regulate your emotions. But doing whatever you can to start to rebuild a life that you want to live, even though you've been through a particular hardship, is part of what resiliency is. And I do want to say that not everything that happens to us is a tragedy. Sometimes we lose someone we love and we are not shattered. Or we will go through a physical illness and we aren't destroyed. Or we lose a job and have financial difficulties, but we're still okay. So just because we have bad things happen to us, they aren't necessarily tragedies. But some things are tragic. The other thing that we want to do after tragedy is grieve. And grief is ridiculously hard. And we don't really want to bother with it if we can help it. But the truth is, we cannot heal until we've actually honored what we've lost. And tragedy is always based on losses. And often it's a number of losses. Because when there's one catastrophe, they tend to build. You've perhaps experienced that. It's not just one thing. Or when it rains, it pours. It's common for things to build on each other. And so it's really important to honor what has been taken from us. And it might not just be a person or a place or a dream or a way of life, but it's often our worldview. So if we used to think of the world as safe, and now we tend to think that, oh, danger abounds, or if we used to think that there was a certain karmic justice where people would get what they deserved, and then we start to think, well, maybe not. Or perhaps our identity has been lost. Those are things that also need to be acknowledged. So it's not just the loss itself, but even the way we think about our world and what happens to us that needs to be addressed. And the third task after tragedy is that we need to process it. Sometimes that involves talking about it. And sometimes to talk about it would actually be to re-traumatize somebody. So I do not always say to somebody, you gotta talk about it. Maybe that isn't the way to process. It might be art therapy or music or EMDR, any number of things. But it does need to be intentionally processed. PTSD is not caused by a specific event. So even though there are some really terrible, horrible, terrifically awful things that happen, none of those automatically lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. It's when people are not able to process and metabolize those events in a timely manner that it becomes PTSD. Now, about 80% of folks will just sort of heal naturally, but about 20% are going to need some extra help processing that. And if you find yourself in that space, there are some wonderful ways to get some assistance to do that sort of processing. I'm happy to talk with you about some of them. But we need to, and I love the word metabolize. We have to take it in, take it apart, examine it. Take in those parts that actually are useful for us. Let it become part of who we are. We metabolize whatever this trauma was. And if you think about, say, a physical wound, if you keep it clean, if you attend to it, you usually will get a scar. And most of the time, the scar doesn't hurt. Some days it might, like when it's going to rain or something. It's very similar with processing something and getting in there and dealing with it. You need to attend to it for those psychic wounds to heal. Now that doesn't, I'm not promising you that it will never hurt, but it certainly will hurt a lot less than if you do nothing with it and allow it just to churn around and fester in there. And part of the ways we process it is to look at what are the stories that we tell ourselves around our calamities. And we tend to have two types. We have something called the redemption story, and then we have the contagion story. So if we can find some good, some silver lining in the storm clouds, say the horrible rape that results in a delightful child, that might be a redemption story. When we can find that there was something, maybe a terrific career that came out of a job that we really valued and that knocked us for a loop when we lost it. That might be something that is redemptive. But it's really important not to require that any horrific event has to have a redemption story. They don't always. And so if we insist on it, we actually do damage. So for example, if we say to a cancer survivor that they're somehow wrong for not being able to find that they are loved more or that they are more alive after having had this diagnosis, maybe they aren't. Maybe that didn't change for them. Maybe they felt plenty loved and plenty alive before. So we don't, as Westerners, we love redemption stories, and it is our tendency to push for it, to ask what's that blessing that was hidden in that awful thing. Sometimes the only thing good we can say is, we survived. If we cannot find some goodness that came out of this event, and it's all downhill from here, we say it's contagious. It's a contagion story. The good news is that you actually can shift that story depending on where you stop it. And I think this is useful to know. So if you have thought of yourself as perhaps you were, a caterpillar that turned into a butterfly, and then you went through this heartbreak, and now you feel like the butterfly that became the caterpillar, well, that's one stopping point. But what if you say, I'm still in the chrysalis. I'm still processing. I'm still being reconstituted. That changes the story, doesn't it? It's no longer just stuck at being a contagion story. And it might never get to a full redemption story, but it doesn't have to be stuck at just plain old redemption, or plain old contagion. One of the things that matters also is time. So time does not heal all wounds. As a matter of fact, wounds that are not attended to get worse over time. But it's helpful to know that sometimes we do need time and some distance before we can process or fully take in the meaning of what happened to us. So, 2 examples. When there is an expected death, we assume that it usually takes a person about a year to go through the grief process. Some of you know that I work as a hospice chaplain. And in hospice, we provide 13 months, through the first anniversary of a death. We provide bereavement support, even if this was expected, because we assume it's going to take about a year. If the death was sudden and violent, 5 to 7 years is much more likely. And that doesn't mean that the person is weak or they aren't capable or they aren't smart or enlightened or whatever term we want to use. It just sometimes takes time before we're able to deal with these things. The big community disasters that I spoke of, those are things that often take years to deal with. They have their own stages. There's before the disaster, the impact of the disaster. Then there's usually what we call the heroic stage, and the media loves this one because this is where people are out doing altruistic things and folks are jumping in rivers and pulling children out of buses, and they're doing all sorts of stuff, often at risk to themselves, to save other people. There's a honeymoon phase after a disaster, when people think, we're going to get through this, we're going to recover relatively quickly. They're finding resources, they're connecting with neighbors, and they're connecting with providers, and this seems doable. And then there's a disillusionment phase, where, it doesn't seem quite so possible now. Folks aren't stepping up the way we really expected them to. The government isn't helping as much as we hoped. The resources have run out. And then there's a recovery phase. And people are still grieving and they're still dealing with the loss. But they've kind of taken responsibility for it themselves. And they're moving forward. And that can take years. And there's also a preparation phase, and that's when the community recognizes places where they are vulnerable. And they start to take steps to prevent that same disaster or similar catastrophes in the future. That takes a long time. So when we're dealing with these sort of horrible experiences that we can go through, it often takes a while, and it can take years to get through this stuff. While we're going through it, comfort and hope are important. It's not easy, but it is so necessary. And so where can you find comfort and hope? And one place is just in common humanity. Knowing that your particular Waterloo is probably not unique to you among all humankind, even if it feels that way. That other folks have probably gone through this as well and survived. Humankind is known for dealing with hard stuff, and Buddhism even begins with life is hard. Or nature. When your world has been completely shaken up and nothing seems stable, to go out and to see that the sun rises and it sets, and you can watch the cycle of the seasons, and the earth continues in its orbit in the universe, and you can look to that stability. There's something often very calming and comforting about nature. There is beauty sometimes in sorrow, which is often very unexpected. And if you happen to be one of the people who can find beauty in sorrow, you are in good company You aren't weird and you aren't morbid. And poetry, by the way, is a fabulous resource. There are all sorts of terrific poems about finding some beauty in the most unlikely of places. Perseverance and role models. When you've been through the ringer, to look back in history or to think of folks you know who've been able to get their life back after going through a tragedy, to find that they can still be open-hearted, that they don't necessarily wind up bitter and disappointed, to see people do things that seem impossible, that's a tremendous comfort. Oh, I don't have to end up the way I'm feeling right now. There is a way out. Faith. And I'm not talking about blind faith and our theology, which often changes after a tragedy. And you want to look carefully at your theology and does it still work? But you look when you are not in the throes of despair or frustration. But you look at your theology. And in faith, examining the world honestly and finding what are the reasons to stick around. Why should I keep breathing in and out? Why should I stay on this earth? Finding people with whom we can connect, and animals and nature. If you believe in the divine, using that resource. If you connect with other humans, using that. But there are other ways to use your faith to get through what's so hard. And this one I am sure you folks know, and that is having a sense of humor. How sometimes being able to laugh gives you power when you had none. I'm sure you've had that experience. When I was writing this sermon, I had two songs that were going through my head. The first was the Bee Gees' Tragedy. I do not like falsetto. So that was kind of unfortunate. That just stuck in there. And the other was from an old, comedy variety type show. And as soon as I say, I'm not going to try and sing it, but you will know the words. Doom, despair, and agony on me. Let's see, now I just forgot them, of course. Where is it? Oh, there we go. Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Oh, doom, despair, and agony on me. And you got to put your hand up to your forehead when you do that. But being able to find some humor in the midst of all this, even if it seems nonsensical or people don't understand why you're laughing, it gives you a sense of power. It gives you some of those chemicals that you need to get through this. And it's one of the best ways to have some comfort. So what do we do after the tragedy? Once we realize that we have survived, we do whatever we can to get some balance back in our lives. And we do whatever we need to do to not make things worse. Then we begin the work of resilience, doing what we can to create the life that we want to live. We support ourselves while we grieve all that is lost. We process and metabolize our catastrophe, paying attention to the meaning we give it and the stories that we tell ourselves about it. And we take the time that we need, and we allow ourselves to move through the phases of a disaster. Through it all, we search for comfort and hope, remembering that life is still valuable. And when all else fails, we use humor to cope and to give us back some of our power. If and when you are confronted with a tragedy, may you find that you are stronger than you imagined. May you discover that the love of family and friends and even strangers is able to carry you across the desperate valleys. May you be buoyed by the strength of good humor, keeping your head above the waters. And may your disasters be small and your distresses manageable. Amen and amen. Did I mention the healing power of music? I think that needs to go in the sermon next time. Well, as you know, part of our theology is that the minister is not the one who just hands down what it is you need to think or believe, but that you folks also have wisdom and experience. And so I would love to hear, for you folks here and for those folks online, what is it that you'd like to share, and what are your thoughts?
I
guess I can process this myself, but I'd like to know what your take on it is. When you have a tragedy in your past, if you think of your life as this, quilt that, gets starting weaving the day you're born and goes all the way to when you die. There's a tragedy, and it's this stain on that quilt. It's never gonna go away. And you look back and you say, that's not the quilt I wanted. And it's got that damn stain on it that I can ignore, or I can think, oh, well, the other part of the quilt, I don't know. Talk to me about that analogy. That stain's never gonna go away.
That is an actually great metaphor. Sometimes you can go back and do the work and process it, and it can come out. Sometimes. And sometimes part of the loss is you got that stain. And that is part of your life. And it is a loss, because that is not what you had in mind. Your life was not supposed to go this way. And what are you going to do about it? This is how it is. And so I didn't want to pretend that if you just get up there and go through all the steps and process this tragedy, it all goes away. It doesn't necessarily. Sometimes there is life before the tragedy and life after the tragedy. And there are even different rules, and we are different people. And
think of it as two different quilts.
Can I
Maybe.
throw something up?
Yes, please.
Stain and we're a rip. No, I think you, instead of seeing that as a stain, see it as a dye that permeates the threads that are there, or makes new threads, and you just thread them into your quilt. It's not a stain on the quilt. It's something that has permeated the threads that exist, and that you can weave into a new pattern.
I don't want that in my pattern.
I was thinking of this, that Chinese proverb where when something has a crack in it, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah, you
And
fill
it's
the cracks
filled
with gold.
Yeah. And I'm going to say sometimes. And I really want to be careful about saying it always works that way.
Right.
Sometimes there is not a redemption story to it. And I will tell you that one of my frustrations was in dealing with a tragedy when I was working with a therapist who kept trying to say, where was the blessing? Mm-hmm. It's like, there wasn't. It would have made her feel much better. But the fact is, in this case, there wasn't. And that is part of the quilt I got, which is not what I had in mind. And I can't take it back. That's such a great analogy. Yeah, sometimes you can weave it in and make it better. And sometimes...
I have a question. Oh, did somebody else?
Yeah.
I feel like this conversation is about adult trauma, and I'm thinking about the children who have survived school shootings and what kind of, how they deal with it, how the families deal with the trauma. Specifically the children's trauma.
Right.
Do you have any insight about childhood trauma?
It needs to be intentionally addressed. And it often has to be addressed repeatedly. For example, children will grieve in a cycle. So if they lost a parent at age 5, they would grieve that parent at age 5. And then they might grieve again at age 7. And then again at age 9, whatever. Each time they hit a different phase, they need to re-grieve. And with trauma, a need to reprocess where they are at that stage with what happened to them.
So
and
is it carried through? I mean, I'm suspecting that it carries through. I know they bring in like trauma therapists right after an incident like this happens,
Right.
but I don't know how specifically how long that kind of therapy.
and it also depends, because something that might not normally be a trauma for somebody, if they're in the midst of 14 other things, that might be a trauma for them. Or whatever it was horrible enough that that's a trauma that's going to affect them forever. And if you have a trauma that's affecting you forever, that's one to go back and try and process and metabolize. But it doesn't mean it'll go away.
So those kids are probably gonna carry it. the
Yes,
rest of
they
their
will.
lives.
And I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. Hopefully it's not going to hurt all the time, and hopefully they won't flinch every time they hear a car backfire. But there will always, I mean, it's like if we have scars, it's part of us. That is part of who they are, part of what they went through. I'm going to go to Alice and then I'll go.
Yeah. You know what, I will put that off. You should, okay, I mean, how much longer do you want to? Okay, I'll say it. Can anger be beneficial to
Yes.
the grieving process?
Hell yes.
That was easy.
Yes, anger's a necessary part of grieving. Absolutely. And it's that part of us that says, I don't deserve this, which is actually pretty healthy. So I'm all for anger.
That's so interesting, because when after Paul died, I never felt angry because I knew how much he didn't want to die. And I always felt, or still do, like, what's wrong with me?
It doesn't happen for everybody, and it
Yeah.
doesn't happen for every grief,
Yeah.
but it happens often.
Yeah.
And it might not be at the person, it might be at the medical establishment, or it might be at the grass for growing, God bless it, because now I gotta mow. But we often get mad.
I can't help but think about my Rwandan family, friends, most of you know. They, the mother and father they survived the Rwandan genocide. Not together, but anyway, they ended up here and had 3 beautiful children. And they came to the zoo school yesterday to see me and support me, and she had to go to work, but Ngabo and the 3 little girls helped me pack up all my stuff. And we went as a troop, getting it out to my car. But I had connected them with some other people who could help him because he wanted to make this documentary. And he was so excited yesterday, telling me that the woman came over, they sat down and talked for a long time. He said everything went perfectly, we have a plan, she's gonna connect us to people for the funding, and the documentary is gonna focus on what happened, how we suffered through the genocide, and how music is healing me. So he was excited, and I thought sharing his story is going to be so healing. And the other thing about kids, because I'm always careful what I say, because I don't know how much the kids know. They're 2, 5, and 7. But one time we were watching this video of him in the greenhouse and talking about, and how he lost his finger and his family and everything in the bombing of his house. And his 11-year-old, grabs his hand and says, yeah, how did you lose your finger, Daddy? So I knew then that, okay, they hadn't talked about that. So that's interesting, and how they'll handle that, and how this documentary becoming public will impact their children. But the other thing that Ngabo said, because his wife was 12, when she witnessed her mother being killed. He was 19 when his family got killed. And she said, I think it was harder for my husband because he was older. He was starting his adult life. And so he felt that whole thing crumble. Where she was young enough that she didn't have as strong an image of what she wanted for the future. Anyway, it's so complicated, but interesting.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
And there's a whole, there's fortunately now a lot of science and a lot of focus on collective trauma and generational trauma that we're starting to look at. I'm aware of time. I do want to see if there's anyone online who has anything that they feel pressed to say. We're all staring at the computer. We have closing hymn 391.
Yes. Madison will play a short introduction.
We still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
You may be seated. I leave you with one of my favorite benedictions. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Blessed be. And Alice, I think it's yours.
It's a postlude next, and then I'll finish up.
Okay. Thank you.
extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Enjoy the treats and good conversation. What?
Thank you.
You know what, I really, it's clear that your words come from a great deal of research into people who have studied all these, and to me, that's so valuable. I have an intellectual bent to one, but it's also just learning how the real experts are, which you are in many ways, but I imagine you couldn't do